Hey guys, Miss Sandlin here. I have made it successfully upstairs to Zach's computer. That's what I usually record this stuff on because he's done with his Zoom meeting and we had some lunch. I had some bagel bites. They were pretty good. But we're going to keep reading Percy Jackson and the Titan's Curse, where we last left off. Percy, Talia, Bianca, Zoe, and Grover. I gotta remember, it's a long list. They rode the wild boar all the way to some junkyard place in Arizona, and none other than Ares showed up to seem to pick a fight with Percy, but turns out someone wanted to speak to him, and it was the goddess of love, Aphrodite. And she implied some stuff about Percy and Annabeth. So we'll see how this continues to go. You're lucky, punk. Ares pushed me away from the limo. Be grateful. For what? That we're being nice. So if it was up to me, so why haven't you killed me? I shot back. It was a stupid thing to say to the god of war, but being around him always made me feel angry and reckless. Ares nodded, like I'd finally said something intelligent. I'd love to kill you, seriously, he said. But see, I got a situation. Word on Olympus is that you might start the biggest war in history. I can't risk messing that up. Besides, Aphrodite thinks you're some kind of soap opera star or something. I kill you, that makes me look bad with her. But don't worry, I haven't forgotten my promise. Someday soon, kid, real soon, you're going to raise your sword to fight, and you're going to remember the wrath of Ares. I balled my fists. Why wait? I beat you once. How's that ankle healing up? He grinned crookedly. Not bad, punk, but you got nothing on the master of taunts. I'll start the fight when I'm good and ready. Until then, get lost. He snapped his fingers and the world did a 360 spinning in a cloud of red dust. I fell to the ground. When I stood up again, the limousine was gone. The road, the taco restaurant, the whole town of Gila was gone. My friends and I were standing in the middle of a junkyard, mountains of scrap metal stretched out in every direction. What did she want with you? Bianca asked once I told them about Aphrodite. Oh, not sure, I lied. She said to be careful in her husband's junkyard. She said not to pick anything up. Zoe narrowed her eyes. The goddess of love would not make a special trip to tell thee that. Be careful, Percy. Aphrodite has led many heroes astray. For once, I agree with Zoe, Talia said. You can't trust Aphrodite. Grover was looking at me funny. Being empathetic and all, he could usually read my emotions, and I got the feeling he knew exactly what Aphrodite had talked to me about. So, I said, anxious to change the subject, how do we get out of here? That way, Zoe said. That is west. How can you tell? In the light of the full moon, I was surprised how well I could see her roll her eyes at me. Ursa Major is in the north, she said, which means that must be west. She pointed west. Then at the northern constellation, which was hard to make out because there were so many other stars. Oh yeah, I said, that bear thing. Zoe looked offended. Show some respect. It was a fine bear, a worthy opponent. You act like it was real. Guys, Grover broke in. Look! We'd reached the crest of a junk mountain. Piles of metal objects glinted in the moonlight. Broken heads of bronze horses, metal legs from human statues, smashed chariots, tons of shields and swords and other weapons, along with more modern stuff, like cars that gleamed gold and silver, refrigerators, washing machines, and computer monitors. Whoa, Bianca said. That's stuff. Some of it looks like real gold. It is, Talia said grimly. Like Percy said, don't touch anything. This is the junkyard of the gods. Junk? Grover picked up a beautiful crown made of gold, silver, and jewels. It was broken on one side as if it had been split by an axe. You call this junk? He bit off a point and began to chew. It's delicious. Talia swatted the crown out of his hands. I'm serious, Grover. Look, Bianca said. She raced down the hill, tripping over bronze coils and golden plates. She picked up a bow that glowed silver in the moonlight. A hunter's bow! She yelped in surprise as the bow began to shrink and became a hair clip, shaped like a crescent moon. It's just like Percy's sword. Zoe's face was grim. Leave it, Bianca. But it is here for a reason. Anything thrown away in this junkyard must stay in this yard. It is defective or cursed. Bianca reluctantly set the hair clip down. I don't like this place, Talia said. She gripped the shaft of her spear. You think we're going to get attacked by killer refrigerators? I asked. She gave me a hard look. Zoe's right, Percy. Things get thrown away here for a reason. Now come on, let's get across the yard. That's the second time you've agreed with Zoe, I muttered, but Talia ignored me. We started picking our way through the hills and valleys of junk. The stuff seemed to go on forever, and if it hadn't been for Ursa Major, we would have gotten lost. All the hills pretty much looked the same. I'd like to say we left the stuff alone, but there was too much cool junk not to check out some of it. I found an electric guitar shaped like Apollo's lyre that was so sweet I had to pick it up. Grover found a broken tree made out of metal. It had been chopped to pieces, but some of the branches still had golden birds in them. They whirred around when Grover picked them up, trying to flap their wings. Finally, we saw the edge of the junkyard about half a mile ahead of us, the lights of a highway stretching through the desert. But between us and the road... What is that? Bianca gasped. Ahead of us was a hill much bigger and longer than the others. It was like a metal mesa, the length of a football field and as tall as goalposts. At one end of the mesa was a row of 10 thick metal columns, wedged tightly together. Bianca frowned. They look like toes, Grover said. Bianca nodded. Really, really large toes. Zoe and Talia exchanged nervous looks. Let's go around, Talia said. Far around. But the road is right over there, I protested. Quicker to climb over. Ping! Talia hefted her spear and Zoe drew her bow, but then I realized it was only Grover. He had thrown a piece of scrap metal at the toes and hit one, making a deep echo as if the column were hollow. Why did you do that? Zoe demanded. Grover cringed. I don't know. I don't like fake feet. Come on, Talia looked at me. Around. I didn't argue. The toes were kind of starting to freak me out. I mean, who sculpts 10-foot-tall metal toes and sticks them in a junkyard? After several minutes of walking, we finally stepped onto the highway, an abandoned but well-lit stretch of black asphalt. We made it out, Zoe said. Thank the gods. But apparently, the gods didn't want to be thanked. At that moment, I heard a sound like 1,000 trash compactors crushing metal. I whirled around. Behind us, the scrap mountain was boiling, rising up. The 10 toes tilted over, and I realized why they looked like toes. They were toes. The thing that rose up from the metal was a bronze giant in full Greek battle armor. He was impossibly tall, a skyscraper with legs and arms. He gleamed wickedly in the moonlight. He looked down at us, and his face was deformed. The left side was partially melted off. His joints creaked with rust, and across his hammered chest, written in thick dust by some giant finger, were the words, "Wash me." Talos! Zoe gasped. Who's Talos? I stuttered. One of Hephaestus's creations, Talia said. But that can't be the original. It's too small. A prototype, maybe? A defective model? The metal giant did not like the word defective. He moved one hand to his sword belt and drew his weapon. The sound of it coming out of its sheath was horrible, metal screeching against metal. The blade was 100 feet long, easy. It looked rusty and dull, but I didn't figure that mattered. Getting hit with that thing would be like getting hit with a battleship. Someone took something, Zoe said. Who took something? She stared accusingly at me. I shook my head. I'm a lot of things, but I am not a thief. Bianca didn't say anything. I could swear she looked guilty, but I didn't have time to think about it, because the giant defective Talos took one step towards us, closing half the distance and making the ground shake. Run! Grover yelped. Great advice, except that it was hopeless. At a leisurely stroll, this thing could outdistance us easily. We split up, the way we'd done with the Nemean lion. Talia drew her shield and held it up as she ran down the highway. The giant swung his sword and took out a row of power lines, which exploded in sparks and scattered across Talia's path. Zoe's arrows whistled toward the creature's face, but shattered harmlessly against the metal. Grover brayed like a baby goat and went climbing up a mountain of metal. Bianca and I ended up next to each other, hiding behind a broken chariot. You took something, I said. That bow. No, she said, but her voice was quivering. Give it back, I said. Throw it down. I didn't take the bow. Besides, it's too late. What did you take? But before she could answer, I heard a massive creaking noise, and a shadow blotted out the sky. Move! I tore down the hill, Bianca right behind me as the giant's foot smashed a crater in the ground where we'd just been hiding. Hey, Talos! Grover yelled, but the monster raised his sword, looking down at Bianca and me. Grover played a quick melody on his pipes. Over at the highway, the downed power lines began to dance. I understood what Grover was going to do a split second before it happened. One of the poles with power lines still attached flew toward Talos' back leg and wrapped around his calf. The line sparked and sent a jolt of electricity up the giant's backside. Talos whirled around, creaking and sparking. Grover had bought us a few seconds. Come on, I told Bianca, but she stayed frozen. From her pocket, she brought out a small metal figurine, a statue of a god. It was for Nico. It was the only statue he didn't have. How can you think of mytho-magic at a time like this? There were tears in her eyes. Throw it down, I said. Maybe the giant will leave us alone. She dropped it reluctantly, but nothing happened. The giant kept coming after Grover. It stabbed its sword into a junk hill, missing Grover by a few feet, but scrap metal made an avalanche over him, and then I couldn't see him anymore. No! Talia yelled. She pointed her spear, and a blue arc of lightning shot out, hitting the monster in his rusty knee, which buckled. The giant collapsed, but immediately started to rise again. It was hard to tell if it could feel anything. There weren't any emotions in its half-melted face, but I got the sense that it was about as ticked off as a 20-story tall metal warrior could be. He raised his foot to stomp, and I saw that his sole was treaded like the bottom of a sneaker. There was a hole in his heel, like a large manhole, and there were red words painted around it, which I deciphered only after the foot came down. For maintenance only. Crazy idea time, I said. Bianca looked at me nervously. Anything. I told her about the maintenance hatch. There may be a way to control this thing. Switches or something. I'm gonna get inside. How? You'll have to stand her at its foot, and then you'll be crushed. Distracted, I said. I'll just have to time it right. Bianca's jaw tightened. No, I'll go. You can't. You're new at this. You'll die. It's my fault the monster came after us, she said. It's my responsibility. Here. She picked up the little god statue and pressed it into my hand. If anything happens, give that to Nico. Tell him I'm sorry. Bianca, no! But she wasn't waiting for me. She charged at the monster's left foot. Talia had its attention for the moment. She'd learned that the giant was big but slow. If he could stay close to it and not get smashed, he could run around it and stay alive. At least it was working so far. Bianca got right next to the giant's foot, trying to balance herself on the metal scraps that swayed and shifted with its weight. Zoe yelled, What are you doing? Get it to raise its foot, she said. Zoe shot an arrow toward the monster's face, and it flew straight into one nostril. The giant straightened and shook his head. Hey, junk boy, I yelled. Down here! I ran up to its big toe and stabbed it with riptide. The magic blade cut a gash in the bronze. Unfortunately, my plan worked. Talos looked down at me and raised his foot to squash me like a bug. I didn't see what Bianca was doing. I had to turn and run. The foot came down about 2 inches behind me, and I was knocked into the air. I hit something hard and sat up, dazed. I had been thrown into an Olympus air refrigerator. The monster was about to finish me off, but Grover somehow dug himself out of the junk pile. He played his pipes frantically, and his music sent another power line pole whacking against Talos' thigh. The monster turned. Grover should have run, but he must have been too exhausted from the effort of so much magic. He took 2 steps, fell, and didn't get back up. Grover! Talia and I both ran toward him, but I knew we'd be too late. The monster raised his sword to smash Grover. Then he froze. Talos cocked his head to one side like he was hearing strange new music. He started moving his arms and legs in weird ways, doing the funky chicken. Then he made a fist and punched himself in the face. Go, Bianca! I yelled. Zoe looked horrified. She is inside. The monsters staggered around, and I realized we were still in danger. Talia and I grabbed Grover and ran with him toward the highway. Zoe was already ahead of us. She yelled, How will Bianca get out? Then the giant hit itself in the head again and dropped his sword. A shudder ran through his whole body, and he staggered toward the power lines. Look out! I yelled, but it was too late. The giant's ankle snared the lines, and blue flickers of electricity shot up his body. I hoped the inside was insulated. I had no idea what was going on in there. The giant careened back into the junkyard, and his right hand fell off, landing in the scrap metal with a horrible clang. His left arm came loose too. He was falling apart at the joints. Talos began to run. "Wait!" Zoe yelled. We ran after him, but there was no way we could keep up. Pieces of the robot kept falling off, getting in our way. The giant crumbled from the top down. His head, his chest, and finally his legs collapsed. When we reached the wreckage, we searched frantically, yelling Bianca's name. We crawled around in the vast hollow pieces and the legs and the head. We searched until the sun started to rise, but no luck. Excuse me. Zoe sat down and wept. I was stunned to see her cry. Talia yelled in rage and impaled her sword in the giant's smashed face. "We can keep searching," I said. "It's light now. We'll find her." "No, we won't," Grover said miserably. "It happened just like it was supposed to." "What are you talking about?" I demanded. He looked up at me with big watery eyes. "The prophecy. One shall be lost and the land without rain." Why hadn't I seen it? Why had I let her go instead of me? Here we were in the desert, and Bianca D'Angelo was gone. And that's the end of chapter 13. I'll leave us there. It's a short little read today. So Bianca took a figure from the junkyard for Nico. I mean, thoughtful, but turned out being a poor choice. So maybe we'll be able to find her again, but that just means that the rest of the prophecy, it was something along the lines of a parent will destroy their child or something, which means all we've got left is Zoe, Grover, Percy, and Talia. We don't know who Zoe and Grover's parents are, but I kind of doubt it's going to be them. So on that super positive note, I'll leave us here. Check back in tomorrow to see me read chapter 14, which you guys should think is pretty funny. Chapter 14 is about when they get to a big dam that stops water. So there's a lot of puns in that way. Chapter 14 is called I Have a Dam Problem. So we'll see how that goes. See you tomorrow, guys.